So we're at the end of Series 8, another big one for the show, almost entirely due to the introduction of the Master, and the very odd format of having him appear in every serial, not to mention the new companion and the introduction of a new member of UNIT, although there is also the fact that this season has this incarnation of the Doctor go to another planet for the first time. So we've got a lot to talk about, so as usual, let's begin with the serials. The season began with Terror of the Autons, which saw the return of the foes from the previous season, and introduced an old enemy of the Doctor, the Master. It also introduces a new companion in the form of Jo, alongside Mike Yates as a new member of UNIT. While it has a lot going for it on paper, it's definitely a step down from the previous season, as it ends up feeling hindered by what's being asked of it. Next was The Mind of Evil, which is a serial that I'm quite mixed on, because while it has some great character moments and really gives us a much stronger version of Jo and Yates than the previous serial, it does suffer from two separate ideas which don't get their full time to shine and compete with each other to be the most important. The Claws of Axos was a more simple story, which I have a lot of nostalgia for. It played with some very interesting ideas and had a good message behind it, but it is perhaps the most average story of the season, although it does have the first full use of the TARDIS in this era, even if it's limited. Colony in Space finally took the Doctor off of Earth again, with the Time Lord sending him on a mission to stop the Master, and ends up sorting a dispute between two groups of humans. It does fit well into this era, but after all the build-up to the Doctor finally leaving 70s Earth, it is a bit of a letdown in a way, especially since it's the Master again. The season ended with The Demons, an absolute classic, which just didn't land for me. Its script and production values are great, which is clear to see, but despite all that, I think by this point having the Master being the villain again really takes away from the story for me. So let's rank them, with the last place one being a bit of a tie between Terror of the Autons and Colony in Space. I can't decide which I don't enjoy the most, as both have their problems and their highs. Next is The Demons, then The Mind of Evil, and in first place is The Claws of Axos, which is almost certainly due to the nostalgia I have for it. On the characters, we get a slightly bigger cast than last season, so let's begin with the returning members of UNIT, beginning with the Brigadier. With the season taking the Doctor away from the Earth, it means that the Brig doesn't get the same amount of screen time, but still features in all the serials, even if only for 2 scenes in Colony. With the tone of the season not being quite as serious as the last one, it means that the Brig gets a lot more funny moments, with him constantly standing out. Benton likewise stands out in all the serials he's in, with him appearing in all but Colony. He's at his best in Mind of Evil, but is somewhat sidelined in both Terror and Claws due to the structure of the stories and the presence of Yates. The Demons also uses him very well, but his presence in all the serials is appreciated as he helps to lighten the tone with his humour. Yates is the new guy for UNIT and serves the important role of allowing the writers to avoid creating a new captain every serial, as we had with the last season. He has plenty of strong moments with him getting the chance to confront the Master on 2 occasions, which really gives him a sense of presence in those serials. He does sometimes take away from both the Brig and Benton, but I think he fits well in the middle as the captain, but quite often feels a bit out of place in the role, especially in Terror when he's a bit too casual in the Doctor's lab. He is a welcome addition to the cast and has his strong moments. Next is Jo, who is Liz's replacement. Jo is a very different type of person, being a lot more naive and lacking the intelligence of her predecessors. But the writers do use this to make the rest of her traits stand out more, with her being a far more down-to-earth and human companion, with her often being a moral centre who objects to the actions of others, alongside being someone who cares for the underdog. Like with most characters, she's at her best in Mind of Evil, where her scared trait is toned down, with her more proactive traits, such as her caring side and her selfless side, being heightened. This does make it feel like Evil should have come later in her development, with the following serials switching between her being scared and proactive, but she's generally strong here. Next is the Doctor, who is a more well-rounded version of the one we had in the previous season. With this season allowing for more humour, the funnier side of this incarnation comes out more often, although this does mean we get less of the darker edge we saw in this incarnation last season. There also aren't any serials which allow him to be the middle ground in the conflict, trying to create peace. The closest to this is Claws of Axos, but he realises that the Axons are the villains very early on, and so this idea doesn't have time to take effect. His scientific side is shown off on plenty of occasions too, with him finally repairing the TARDIS somewhat, even if one serial suggests that he made an entirely new dematerialisation circuit, despite the fact he's not meant to know how to do anything like that. Colony is a good one for him, as we've got a lot going on and we get to see him finally leave Earth, even if only for a short while. Throughout he continues to stand out, and by having him face off against the Master means that we get to see new sides to him that we haven't really before. Now, since I've mentioned him, let's talk about the Master, which while he's not a main character, he was in every serial, and there is definitely stuff to discuss about him. So the Master being a villainous Time Lord isn't anything new at this point, as we've already had 2 before, but having this history with the Doctor is. This gives the 2 of them plenty of moments where they have some great back and forth, and when they end up working together it does feel somewhat believable, although it is often very out of place given how quickly it happens in the season, and that particular occasion does end up hurting the Master's character. But we have to address the Master being in all the serials, as I've touched on it a few times, but not really gone into it in full. So having a villain appear in all the serials is interesting, but the problem is that it becomes incredibly boring as the season proceeds and does really wear on you, with it admittedly hurting the final serial the most. While he is important to the plot in the first three, Colony is really the one where he feels like he's been tacked on the most, and I think the story without him and his plotline would have been much better. The ending of Mind of Evil also leaves us on a line, which makes you think that the Master won't return until the season finale, but then he shows up again immediately, which really takes away from this line. I think my nostalgia for Claws of Axos really lessens that in the serial, but it's present, and reducing the Master in this season was necessary. On the behind the scenes of this, it also affected Delgado's career, as he got less acting opportunities due to people thinking that he was a main cast member, so all around, the lessening of the Master going forwards will be necessary. So this season overall was definitely a step down from the previous one. There are definitely good things about it. All the new characters are great, even if the Master is heavily overused. After season 7, it's a definite step down, but given how high the quality of that season was all around, it's not unexpected that it would be hard for this season to live up to that. Despite all of these serials having problems, they all have pros which help to elevate them, so even my least favourites are still somewhat strong.